Hello, everybody, and welcome to another show on the weird world of knowing. And we've got a fantastic guest today because she has worked with some really fabulous people. Now, back in the day, I'm saying back in the day, I don't know how far back in the day it is, Rosalyn. You worked in PR and with agencies in London, and you retired from that aspect as a self-made millionaire after working with people like Tony Robbins, and I'm not quite sure who else. I'm sure you'll let us know on that one. But then after you'd retired, you took yourself into coaching and you helped other people then, didn't you, basically? Help get their lives back on track. First of all, Rosalyn, sorry, this is Rosalyn Palmer, everybody. I've not even introduced your name, have I? I do apologise.
Rosalind.
Let me say it properly. Rosalyn Palmer. So welcome, Rosalyn, to the weird world of knowing. And how on earth did you make that transition from PR? Was it by working with people like Tony Robbins that you then got into coaching and transformational therapies? What actually happened on that aspect?
I think the seeds for that were laid well before I worked with Tony Robbins. So I graduated in English literature. You know, my mum, or to use my mum's lovely phraseology, I fannied around reading books for 3 years in London. And it was like, why don't you go and get a job? Thanks. It was the kind of early mid 80s when in London, you know, it was quite a bit of a recession going on. So I fell into this weird world of PR. I ended up in theatre PR. My attraction was really theatre, you know, because I was literary, wasn't I? You know, so anything to do with theatre, how marvelous. And somebody said, "Oh, my boss has just fired his PR and he needs a new one." And I went, "I'll do it." And then I was like, "Oh, what is PR?" Because it really wasn't on people's radar back in that day. It was in its very early stages. So I fell into it, really. I mean, I went for the interview, not knowing what I was doing. And it was like, "Can you talk to people?" "Yeah." Can you write?" "Yeah." You know, "Do you think you'd like to mix with theatre people?" "Yeah." You know, here's the terrible wage and you've got the job. Clearly I fell into a very embryonic industry. And then I went publishing briefly and I got made redundant because it was back in those days when there was a lot of redundancies. And I did this kind of, oh goodness, my glittering career doesn't seem to be going quite where I want it to go in my kind of late 20s. And at the time, Lynn Franks, which is what that TV series and film Absolutely Fabulous is based on, was the agency to work for. It was like, you know, she had the who's who. If you were famous, if you were a fashion designer, if you were happening, if you were the people. And it wasn't really that I was attracted to that celebrity world so much, to be honest. You know, I was a grocer's daughter from Nottingham, you know, I was pretty grounded. But I just knew that somebody actually said to me, "If you work there for a few years, you can work anywhere." And, you know, it was like, let's do it. And so I did. And it was a move worth taking. So at that time, my health was starting to suffer because of some very early, very severe childhood illnesses and not really sorting it out apart from through pharma and through, you know, what your parents knew and what the doctor knew. I was really struggling because suddenly I'm in this world where we're working 80-hour weeks. It really was life in the fast lane. And when you're not 100%, and I ended up having an emergency tonsillectomy, and that wasn't great, you know, and kind of back to work 5 days later. And luckily, Lynn Franks was Buddhist, and most of the people who worked there were Buddhist. I was one of the very few who wasn't. And they introduced me to this world of complementary medicine and chanting and manifestation. And, you know, my mum thought I'd joined a cult. You know, I think she was,
Well, yeah, back in the 80s, I suppose.
yeah, she was very worried.
Yeah.
So I think that groundwork, I know that groundwork, and then fast forward to the kind of early 90s when I've got my own PR agency and I end up on a strange weekend course with a giant man called Tony Robbins and think, I need to do your PR because this stuff just blew my mind, what I was learning, all this mindset stuff, this NLP, everything, and health, every aspect of your life. I was like, I've got to work with this man. And I did, literally my intention to work with him came true and my manifestation of it. And I ended up working with a whole bunch of the real movers and shakers in that world at the time. Edward de Bono, who wore his 6 thinking hats, Brandon Bays, who does The Journey, who you might be aware of, Robert Holden, who runs the Happiness Clinic in Bristol. So I was just in that world. I mean, we had other big clients like Air Miles from BA and financial clients, but this was probably my passion. And also it was a little bit my dark side or my secret side, because even in the 90s, people still thought it was a bit weird.
Yeah, sorry, I've put myself on mute there because the dog is joining in with me. So what a world to be in, though. What a world to be absolutely driving you forward to work with somebody like Tony Robbins. So what stage was that of his career, and how did you help him move this forward?
I only worked with him for, I genuinely can't remember, let's say 6 months or a year. When he was launching in England, and this would be about 1994, let's say, around about that time, people thought he was very strange, and he did not get any good press. I mean, and his press, in fact, was very bad. There was all those misconceptions of this is brainwashing, this is a cult. They make you do a fire walk, and they're going to make you kind of give all your money away and wear white clothes and drink orange juice very soon. It literally the PR he was getting was very, very bad. Or very, nobody had sought to understand certainly not in England. I think in America, they were a few years ahead. I think it was accepted. This whole world of personal development was taking off. It was incredibly embryonic in the UK. And of course, there was like, it's different. We're suspicious of it. It's weird. Let's just say bad things. Also, his company, he'd expanded and changed quite rapidly. And I think he'd had a few, as growing companies do, fallouts with a few people. And, he just put it this way, he was only getting pretty bad press.
Yeah.
And my pitch to him was, I'll get you good press. I'll get people to understand what it is you do. And of course, I need to understand by doing all your courses. And that's what I did. And so it wasn't a long journey together, because I think once that switch happened, once that started to change, we went on to other people, like Brandon Bays. Again, when I worked with Brandon Bays, because she came out of Tony's organization, her former husband, Bob Bays, was a kind of genius behind most of it, to be honest. And people were going to her in church halls, kind of going, who is this woman? And after we'd, got a journalist from the Sunday Times to go on her course and got them to understand what it was she was doing, which was very much very early epigenetics, kind of mind-body healing, really. It turned it, and she then became who she is today. I went and saw Marissa Peer because I met her on a Tony Robbins course in Hawaii, and I went to her to hypnotherapy. I'm now an RTT, Rapid Transformational Therapist, which Marissa Peer created. So yeah, it wasn't a long journey with him, but I'd actually, I'm quite proud that I think I was pivotal at that time in really changing. And my mom, here's the deal, God rest her soul, she went from, you've joined a cult and this is weird, to coming to a Tony's weekend course, doing a fire walk and wearing her firework.
Oh, fantastic.
Aged 70 or whatever she was at the time.
Wonderful. So does any of that come under your sort of weird moments of knowing? Because I think that you set off wanting to work with Tony, but that is a desire, isn't it? Because you know that you can make a change. Were there any weird moments of knowing throughout that process?
Oh, totally. I mean, I think, as you know, because we had a chat when we first met, I definitely always have been in that world where I've had something else going on. I've had another level of cognizance. I've had another level of connection, right from being literally a baby. And throughout my childhood, I was just told I was a fanciful child and don't talk about it, and you made that up kind of thing. And so it became this thing that I sort of had a very uneasy relationship with, right through my teens, right through my 20s. I'm having very strange experiences and feeling I can't say them to anybody.
Yeah.
And if I did share them, people are kind of going, we've got a nice ball and a straitjacket for you, there you go. So I learned, it became my kind of hidden side, very much. And when I became immersed with the world of Tony, I think particularly went to Hawaii, interestingly, which is where I met Marissa. Hawaii, we went to Maui, and it was a very spiritual island. And a lot of the people, I think, because they came all over the world, but mostly Americans, to Tony's course. And it was at the time that the Celestine Prophecy had just been published, and The Way of the Peaceful Warrior. And so everybody's like reading these books, and we're like, oh, we must read this book. And it was at the bookshop, and we read it. And we went around the island, and I think I let it in at that point. I was like, and I had some really incredible experiences on that trip. And my then husband did as well. And he'd started out being, he was an accountant by training.
Yeah.
He was like, what is this? And he then suddenly, and the both of us became very open to all of that side of our lives and to the world. So yes, it wasn't that Tony's course per se was about that stuff, but I think it just attracted a lot of people where there were conversations and an energy, and it was okay to be talking about these things and letting them in.
It's normalized it, which I think is
Totally.
what we're hoping to do with this podcast.
Yeah,
is
100%.
people feel a little bit more normal about all these weird occurrences that happen in their life. So let's backtrack and go back to a point in your life where you are comfortable to talk to us about one of your weird moments of knowing. Where do you start?
Well, I think during the 90s, interestingly, because I think I've had a bit of a push me, pull me experience with it all. So, started to become open to it. I'd had that grounding in the 80s with, Lynn Franks and people. I tried to get pregnant, and I didn't manage it, which is still an interesting thing to me. But during that journey, I ended up seeing a guy called Jack Temple, who, if you Google him, he's like really out there, and he had a henge. He had a henge in his back garden, and I went to see him, and he was doing kinesiology, and I'm like sat in a henge thinking, I'm sat in a henge. Nottingham, this is not. Well, certainly my background, this is not. So I think during that journey to try and get pregnant, and ironically, the one thing I didn't do was hypnotherapy. And I don't think it was maybe meant to be, but I think during that journey, I opened myself to absolutely everything. So I'm going on flotation tanks. I'm going on channeling weekends. I'm sitting in henges with slightly strange people with strapping tablets to me to pull all the bad energy out of me.
Wow.
I'm doing the whole 9 yards, really. And yeah, I'm suited and booted, and I'm on the front of PR week, and I'm a terribly sensible PR person. And you can come to me and give me your £500,000 account. So I am not saying any of it, not publicly.
Yeah.
And so there was a big push me, pull me thing going on for me in the 90s. But I think the biggest experience I had that really just was like, right. Because I think even up to then, you can kind of go, yeah, maybe I did do that or experience that. Maybe I did see my dead grandma in my bedroom, or maybe I was just very tired and it was a dream. And I think I'd had a lot of that kind of narrative going on. But a couple of things happened. We went on a passive regression, my ex-husband and I, with Denise Lynn. I think it was Denise Lynn. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was. And when I came back to the house, all hell broke loose. Like all my credit cards became deactivated. Every time I walked in a room, all the lights went on and off. And we had an old house, Victorian.
Right.
And I remember sitting at the table one day, and somebody went like that on my head. And I turned around and went, oh, hi, honey. And there was nobody there. And I was like, this is interesting. And so it kind of upped it. And then we adopted a child, and a lot of not great things happened because we adopted an older child who came with, stuff. I don't really want to go into it for the sake of my,
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't talk about it in great detail, but let's just put it this way, that I suddenly was dealing with things that really were very scary and unpleasant. And so all of this is going on.
Yeah.
I'm very open to it, but I'm not quite sure how to deal with it. And then I had this experience with these two members of staff, and I'll cut a very long story short, where I was kind of bringing them on to take over the company for me. I knew I was very tired and I needed a really right hand person and a couple of really good people. I was paying them more than paying myself. That stage in your business where you're like, oh, great. They're taking way more than me. But because we got business mentors and I knew that we had to invest in the business and bring some really good people on, I put so much money, time and energy into these people. And hear the red arrows going over me. I live in Lincolnshire, very near where their base is. So,
Oh, wow. How exciting.
yeah, it's just down the road. So somewhere there's a red arrow fighter jet just gone overhead.
Oh,
I can see it from here. And first of all, one of them handed their notice in and gave me these reasons why. And I was like, oh, okay, that really disappointing, really, God, now I've got to kind of almost start again. And then about a month or two later, the other one did. And it just something wasn't adding up for me. And my ex at the time was like, well, you're just really disappointed. You're tired. It's really annoying. We've got to recruit new people, of course, and anybody who's got a business out there will be relating to all of this. But there was just something else going on for me. And we'd been winning so many pitches. We had a reputation in the PR industry at the time as the one to beat. Nobody could beat us. We were winning 9 out of 10 pitches. Everything we went for, we were getting because we got it right. We were the golden haired children, whatever, we were the agency of the flavor of the week. And suddenly we weren't. And I realized that they'd been going for quite a lot of that business that we weren't getting. And I'm like, I think they're setting up in competition with us. And my ex was like, no, absolutely not. We'll keep an eye on them, not happening, la, la, la. Had no actual proof other than this nagging feeling that would not go away. And then he handed his notice in and I was like, what is going on?
Yeah.
And I really was troubled by this. I was in my bathroom brushing my teeth, as you are.
Yeah.
And suddenly my bathroom mirror gave way and there was no bathroom mirror. And I was in a pub and I was literally sat next to them in the pub, or kind of watching them like it had been an open window and I was right by it. And I just stood there and listened to their conversation in this pub. And sure enough, they were taking business from us. They'd stolen documents, the whole 9 yards. And I walked downstairs to my husband and I went, I was just brushing my teeth and the bathroom mirror gave way. And my worst fears have been realized, this is true. What are we going to do? Of course, he was a bit like, I think you need to go lie down. I think you're working a bit hard. I was like, no, I wouldn't have it. I knew it was such a real experience. I knew it just wasn't, me mind wandering.
Yeah.
So he was still in the business and he had one of those old fashioned briefcases, the old kind of square attaché cases with the little combo locks on. And I just knew that he was stealing documents. They probably had a business plan, blah, 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 blah. We contacted a lawyer. They said, we've got really nothing, if you could find some paperwork. And he went out one day and I went to his desk and I just went underneath and just found his briefcase. It was locked. Now, I don't know. I'm sure if you Google what are the probabilities of getting those 3 numbers and those 3 numbers, if you don't know what those numbers are, it's like the Rubik's Cube, isn't it? There's a multiplier.
Yes.
It was locked and I got the number. I just went, do, ping, open.
Wow.
And there was, a whole just bunch of really, all my worst fears were realized. And so we ended up in court. It wasn't pleasant, it was a horrible experience. I felt very betrayed. They, I think, could never quite understand why we had these documents and everything. In fact, if for any chance they're watching this podcast now, they'll suddenly find out, but there we go. And unfortunately you can't get money back for business you never had,
Yeah.
and I know that we would have won all those bits of business, but because you don't, but we got damages, the whole 9 yards. And yeah, and people just kept saying, how did you know where to find the document? And I clearly never said. I never said, because it just isn't that kind of conversation in business you have, which is my bathroom mirror gave way. Then I understood, and I understood a six-digit code. And what I was being told was just me overthinking or being tired, was actually was something telling me what was really going on.
Gosh, that is such a powerful story. And for anyone who wants to put this into any sort of context, look up the podcast that we talk about random viewing.
That what that is.
I'll put the link
Okay.
in. Well, that's the scientific sort of version of it. Obviously, mediums do this, and people are be able to see into what's happening in the present, future, wherever that may be. But scientifically, there has been research done at the Pears Institute at Princeton University for the past 28, 30 years. And they've actually, sorry about the dogs joining in.
My turkeys are joining in now. It's like Animal Farm. Did you hear that?
Oh, we'll just have to have the dogs joining in for the moment, I'm afraid. So, yeah, and they have done research actually looking into all of this with the rig machine and all sorts of remote viewing aspects. Sorry, it's remote viewing. That's what I meant. So have a look at those. There's going to be the one with Brenda Dunn, Jeff Dunn, and Vasilius Basios. So you can look up those, but I'll put those into the podcast below so that there is some scientific sort of evidence to go with.
There you go.
Again. So that's going to help you as well.
Well, exactly, because I'm the archetypal, as you know, person who's had these, I don't know, do you call them gifts? I don't know, whatever. And I've just kind of not known what they were, what to do with them. I've had probably half my life with people telling me not to be silly. I've been in environments, certainly business environments, and the kind of image I had in business, in PR, even as a therapist, really, where they've not really been conversations that I felt would be very career enhancing. And it's only really now that I'm so at one with myself. I have so many anecdotal confirmations all the time. Even when I'm doing hypnotherapy, people will say to me things like, how did you know to go there? And I'm like, and I always call it my intuition, I was just very tuned into you. I was being very present. I was holding space for you. I was listening. I was using my intuition. But
that's exactly what it is, isn't it? It is that coherence. It's that connection to others, and we do have to connect to those images, thoughts. And you were obviously very connected to your two colleagues because there was such a depth there of meaning to you. It was obviously this is your business. It's a heartfelt connection there. It was something was being taken from you, so it was. When you're feeling that, we connect with something really quite easily.
Yes.
I would say you're highly sensitive to that, which is obviously why you're getting these wonderful visions. So I'm intrigued now. I want to know a little bit more. Can you give us another example?
Another example. Well, I have many, really. I mean, I think when I was in Hawaii and we were reading the Celestine Prophecy, that was an interesting one. So we went to the far side of the island in Maui, and the far side of the island is kind of subtropical rainforest. And there's this area, and I think it's called something like the Five Waterfalls. And so you kind of trek up this little mini mountain in subtropical rainforest, very hot and, very sticky. And if you can imagine, there's all those tubers and vines, and it's not easy walking or easy terrain. And we were going up there to kind of take a swim in one of these pools, these water pools. And we met a guy, and he was absolutely beside himself, just beside himself, absolutely in a frenzy. And he dropped the car keys to his hire car that was parked at the one car bottom of this thing. Now, this place now, there might be stuff there, but back in the day, there was literally, I think, kind of the worst gift shop in the world. and that was it. And a car park, there were, and the nearest town, the nearest place was a good kind of hour's drive away. It really was inaccessible. And he didn't have any spare keys. And it was like, well, look, we can give you a lift back, but we're going to go and do this first. And, you're welcome to wait for us, or we'll rescue you and you can go and get more keys. And my ex at the time said, why don't we just put into practice what we've been doing with the Celestine prophecy and everything? And he said, can you describe the car keys? This guy, I could see this guy was thinking, these people are not being helpful. I'm having a panic attack and they're asking me to describe the car keys. And so we managed to ground him completely, calm him down, do some breathing, everything we'd been learning and doing. I didn't visualize the keys, whatever. And yeah, I was getting a feel for it, but also my ex. And he literally walked. And I want you to understand, this is like vines and tubers. This was not a path. This was not like you've dropped it on a path, and if you went up and down the path enough, you'd find it. It was like a needle in a haystack. And he just walked off and he came back with, and he was holding them. And the guy he nearly fainted. Genuinely, he went from a panic attack to, then we were both, you should really read the Celestial.
I'm so glad you brought that book up as well, because what a gift of a day to actually experience that together. And it really is a gift of a day to be able to work together, because that connection that you build together to be able to create those pictures in your mind and then go and find it. Wonderful. But the Celestine prophecy has actually was paramount, I suppose, to me starting my journey, because I think I was only, I was probably about 25 maybe when that came out. And
Yeah.
I was down in London and we were given that book by a guy that we work with. And that guy that we work with, I used to work at LWT and we worked in the program planning department. He worked in presentation. He was a presentation manager. And I didn't know, he did Reiki and healing and all sorts of things. And he ended up giving me some healing on my knee, and he lent us this book, and it was such a profound read. It was such a beautiful stories to go with it as well, that help you understand how this all works, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah. And I don't think I'd be talking to you today were it not for all of that, because I think the most powerful time, and I don't want to make your podcast go for too long, but was when I had cancer. So fast forward into the kind of early 2000s, I'd sold my business, retired millionairess, look at me, yeah, trophy on the wall, the whole caboodle. And I went to live in the Bahamas, and then everything just imploded. Everything went wrong. And after a couple of years, I discovered I had breast cancer. Now, the interesting thing about that journey is I had a well woman check and a mammogram. I was given the all clear. I then just knew there was something wrong, because I was listening to my body. I knew there was something wrong. I wasn't showing any symptoms really or anything, but I just knew there was something wrong. And about 5 weeks after being given the all clear on a mammogram and a well woman check, I'm in the shower and I literally, my hand just goes like that. And I'm like, I don't like the feeling of that. Doctors the next day. I was on the operating table 3 weeks later, and that was in America. So you have to appreciate, I'm living in the Bahamas. That was in America. That would be like living in England, and having your treatment in, well, maybe not a good example at the moment, but Russia, because it's probably about as far away as the journey would be. And at first, everything, including the biopsy and then the MRI, because I had private insurance, so I was getting really top treatment, stuff that wasn't even available, I think, at the time in the UK. It was, we've got to throw the book at this. You've got a really bad kind of breast cancer. We need to do double mammogram, mastectomy, double mastectomy, radiation, chemo. We're gonna throw the whole 9 yards at this. And suddenly I'm very caught up in all of this, and there's just this voice going, no. And the first thing that happened was, just before I went to America to have the treatment, a woman came and she was a prophetess. And she actually said, you shouldn't have this cancer. I'll just do a bit of psychic surgery on you. I was like, okay, all right, good. And I lay down on my sofa and like, she kind of put her hand and something very strange happened. And she went, you'll be fine. Don't do the big bad treatment. They'll just cut it out and you'll be fine and you'll never have this again. Trust yourself. So off I go to America with this kind of ringing in my ears and thinking, and they've got all these advanced stuff and I'm lighting up like a Christmas tree on all of their machines and they go, oh, it's really bad, and of course, when you're hearing that and the big C word, it's very hard to stay grounded at that time. But I just didn't feel right. And I went to a spiritualist church or a kind of a modern church. I said, I just need to go on the Sunday. I think I was due to be operated, double mastectomy. I'd even seen the plastic surgeon. I was going to have the only good thing was I was going to go up about 3 sizes. I thought, well, if we're doing this, I might as well come out looking a bit better. And I went to this church and I used to go to a community church at the time back in Nassau, very kind of happy clappy out there kind of church. And I fainted and I came round and they had a glass of water and I literally said to these poor people who didn't know me from Adam, I went, oh, it's all going to be okay. I'm not going through with all of that surgery. And they're like, oh, okay. And I later found out that the people in my church back in the Bahamas were praying for me at that time. Now, I've been in and out of all sorts of religions. So I'm not saying this is, something that the Christians have got, a kind of monopoly on, but that was what happened. And I went back to that hospital and I asked a simple question and I just said, I don't think that all the other things that you've seen are cancer. I think we've got one. I want to have the least invasive treatment. I want to have whatever the least invasive thing is, which was a lumpectomy, no chemo. And that's what happened. And it hadn't spread. One day I had to have 7 biopsies because they were like, we have to check all of these other lumps. And they actually all came and gave me a round of applause. And he took me aside afterwards and he said, I don't think I've ever met anybody with such certainty as you about the fact that it wasn't what we thought was the worst prognosis. And you listened to yourself and listened to your body. And I'm blown away by it. I've rarely seen it. And I thought, well, yeah, and it's true, isn't it?
Oh gosh, yeah. I'm rubbing my eyes right now for those of you who are listening, because I might be feeling it too, but when somebody is so in tune with themselves and you start to really listen and tune in, it really does give you sensations in your own body that make you resonate. And it's like this tingling of, yeah, start listening to you because you are so important. You are so worth it. And you do have that knowledge inside you.
Totally. And I get my clients to do it all the time. My coaching and therapy clients. I'm like, look, I'm a really good therapist. I'm a really good coach. But at the end of the day, learn to listen to that voice within. The Matrix. I love the Matrix for many reasons.
Yes.
When he's with the Oracle in, I think it's the second movie, and he's in her flat, she has that sign above her door and it's Temet Nest Nostre. And that means look within. It means look within. It's literally Latin for look within because all I need is already within me. And, I say, that's the journey for my clients. In a way, I make myself redundant. I'm like, look, you've got it. I'm just going to open it up for you and guide you and, help be a catalyst to get you there. But you've really got it.
You really have. But I think that's the beauty of the journey that we're on as well, isn't it? Because I think with the work that we do, it's not a matter of having clients forever and a day, really. The shortest amount of time that we can see people and they move on. We have done our job exceptionally well. It means that we might not see people for very long.
Absolutely. But that's the skill, isn't it?
Sessions might be an extremely a huge amount of time to spend with.
Absolutely.
But you know what? It's worth it because for those 1 to 6 sessions of treating whatever it is and you learning to remember what it is that you need to remember to help heal yourself and come back into resonance with yourself and trust yourself. That's really what it's all worth.
Totally. I developed a 13-week course last year called the Realigned Leader. And one of the people who went through it is an existing ongoing coaching client because she's a businesswoman and we do a lot of work together. And she said to me recently, she said, you know what? Oh, brilliant. I love that. Sal, if you're watching this or listening to this, Sal, I'm talking about you.
Oh,
And she said, after the course and after, and everything and really waking up to all of that, she said, I would be everywhere and I'd constantly have your voice in my head. And I said, that's good. And she said, and now I have my voice in my head.
oh,
And I went, that's better.
oh, that's beautiful. That
I'll
is
take,
so
I'll take that. I'll take that.
yeah, because it does start off with somebody else maybe prompting you, but then when you learn to trust yourself, oh,
Mm,
above and beyond, that really
yeah.
is what it's all about. Oh, Rosalind, absolute pleasure to have you on the
Thank you. Thank you
give
so
us some
much.
really powerful insights. These stories that we're sharing, listeners, I'm sure you've got your own. Please do come and share them with us. Put them in the comments, get in touch, email us, let us know your unique stories, because the more we share like this, the more we normalize everything that we have inside us. And it isn't just remembering these beautiful connections within us, it connects us even deeper to each other. And I think that's what we're all looking for now, isn't it? That connection.
Yeah. And thank you for letting me do that, because I do feel a bit like, I'm coming out. I haven't always had these conversations. I've touched on them, but it feels really good to be able to be in a safe and supportive place where I can have these conversations. So thank you.
Oh gosh, and you're not the first person to say that. So
Mm.
the gratitude is here from me to you for you coming on and sharing, because it really is like we are, whoever we are, whether we are the scientist who is struggling to really truly be themselves and break away from the rigors and boundaries of what they're allowed to research, but what they really know they're being pulled towards to research, and they want to break free and feel safe and come out and just be, or whether it's
Yeah.
you and I who are having these weird experiences that we now suddenly feel, we're not perhaps going to be slaughtered and slandered as much as times gone by, where we were probably being considered as witches, and
Oh,
we
totally. I think they'd be getting
when there.
they'd be getting the torches out.
Yeah, exactly. But how many people around the world are having these type of experiences? And
Well, more and more.
yeah,
And I suppose it's like everything. Once you start to put that energy out and resonate at that level, I find myself having these conversations daily
yeah.
almost. I mean, people I meet on networking groups, LinkedIn, and you go off for a one-to-one and it's all very, sensible and everything. And within half an hour, we've kind of slightly segued into, and in fact, my follow-up course to the Realigned Leader course is the Realigned Life. Because the people who went through it, who are all CEOs and, really super sensible business people, they were like, where do we go next with you, Ros? And I immediately said, well, why don't you go where I'm going, which is more soul alignment,
Mm.
really, manifestation, really opening up to all of that, because that's me. That's the journey I'm on and have been on for quite some time. Would you feel safe with me taking you on that journey? And they've all said yes. Now, that wouldn't have happened a few years ago. Maybe I wouldn't have even had the conversation, but
But how beautiful that we are now taking people with us on our journey, and that we don't feel alone.
yeah.
And we do feel like ourselves, we are creating our own community that is of acceptance, and it's our soul tribe in a way, isn't it? And I'm getting a bit emotional now.
It
I
is,
feel it
no,
in
but
my
it
voice.
is, and
I can feel it here, and it's such a powerfully unique, personal connection with the people that we work with, that why wouldn't we want to do that with them? And Rosalind,
for me,
how can people get in touch with you? Tell us.
the best way would be www.rosalynpalmer.com. If you Google Rosalyn Palmer, there aren't very many of us. I come up a lot. I'm on LinkedIn, Rosalyn Palmer, Facebook, or you can email me at hello at rosalynpalmer.com. And I've got lots of freebies on my website. I'll always jump on a call to talk about the actual, packages and the work I do. And yeah, lots of ways to get hold of me. And I'd love to talk to people and help people.
Oh, just fantastic. Thank you for being here. Absolutely, from the bottom of my heart. I know you will have resonated with so many listeners. And please do let us know your comments, everybody, on what you feel, think. Have you had your own experiences like Rosalind? Come and share them with us, please do. The details will be below for anyone who wants to get in touch. And thank you once again. We will see.
Welcome. Thank you.
Take care.
Thanks so much.
Thank you so much for listening on The Weird World of Knowing. I do hope you enjoyed your time with us. I'm Rachel Earing, your host. And gosh, I'm having a ball putting all of this together for you. So I hope you are too. And if you are, please do like, subscribe and share with those who might actually benefit from these weird moments of knowing as they realise how many of their own they've been having all their life. Take care and we'll see you next week.